The Galactic Council had ruled for 3 millennia, their crystalline spires reaching toward distant stars from the heart of Zephyria Prime. 12 ancient species sat in eternal judgment, their collective wisdom supposedly unmatched across the known universe. The Veltar, with their 6 arms and calculating minds, controlled commerce. The ethereal Jindai manipulated energy itself. The massive Kron enforced order with their impenetrable hide and crushing strength. They had seen countless species rise and fall, absorbed them into their empire, cataloged their strengths and weaknesses like specimens in a vast cosmic museum. When humanity first stumbled into their domain with crude fusion drives and primitive weapons, the Council barely registered their existence. That was their first mistake. Dr. Elena Vasquez sat in the defendant's chair, her small frame dwarfed by the towering alien architecture surrounding her. The translation matrix hummed overhead, converting her words into the 1,000 languages of the Empire. Around her, representatives of dozens of species watched with curious detachment, as if observing an interesting but ultimately insignificant biological curiosity. "Human creature," spoke Overlord Zethkar, his triangular head tilting with practiced condescension. "You stand accused of inciting rebellion across 14 star systems. Your species' refusal to accept proper classification threatens the stability our empire has maintained for longer than your planet has existed." Elena's dark eyes remained steady. She had spent 2 years in their prison cells, subjected to their tests, their probings, their attempts to understand what made humans so stubbornly defiant. They had analyzed her DNA, mapped her neural pathways, dissected her psychological profile with scientific precision. They still didn't understand. "Classification," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper but carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "You mean slavery?" A ripple of what might have been amusement passed through the assembled delegates. The Veltar representative clicked his mandibles. "Such dramatic terminology. We prefer optimal resource allocation. Each species serves according to their natural capabilities. The Morden mine asteroids with their radiation resistance. The Pithali navigate hyperspace with their quantum-sensitive organs. Humans would excel at detail-oriented labor with their curious manual dexterity. We refuse." "Your refusal is irrelevant," Zethkar replied. "Compliance is not optional. Your military vessels have been neutralized. Your colonies isolated. Your home system blockaded. You cannot resist the inevitable." Elena stood slowly, her chains clinking in the oppressive silence, every eye in the chamber fixed upon her small, defiant figure. She thought of Earth, of the blue marble spinning in space now surrounded by the Council's massive dreadnoughts. She thought of her daughter Sophia, barely 5 years old when Elena had volunteered for this mission. Sophia would be 7 now. Would she even remember her mother? "You've studied us for 2 years," Elena said, her voice growing stronger. "Tell me, what have you learned?" Zethkar gestured dismissively. "Your species exhibits useful traits, adaptability, problem-solving capabilities, surprising resilience under stress. These qualities will serve the Empire well once properly directed. And our weaknesses?" The Overlord's crest flared with obvious pleasure. "Emotional instability, irrational attachment to abstract concepts like freedom and dignity, self-destructive tendencies when cornered. These flaws make you unsuitable for leadership, but perfect for managed servitude." Elena nodded thoughtfully. "You're right about one thing. We are self-destructive when cornered." She reached into her collar, fingers finding the small device she had painstakingly constructed from salvaged components over 18 months of careful planning. The Council's security systems were sophisticated, but they were designed to detect weapons and explosives, not signals. "Dr. Vasquez," came a familiar voice through her hidden communicator, so faint only she could hear it. "All ships are in position, awaiting your confirmation." The chamber continued its proceedings around her, oblivious to the conversation taking place across quantum-encrypted channels. Elena looked up at the alien faces staring down at her, their expressions ranging from boredom to mild curiosity. "You want to know humanity's greatest weakness?" she asked. her voice carrying a new edge that made several representatives lean forward. "We can't help but take things personally." Her finger pressed the transmitter. Across the galaxy, humanity's response began. Not the expected desperate military strike against overwhelming odds. Not the futile gesture of a dying species. Instead, something the Council had never anticipated. Something their 3 millennia of experience had never prepared them for. Every star system under Council control simultaneously went dark. The humans hadn't built weapons. They had built viruses. Not biological viruses, but information viruses. Code elegant and ruthless as any predator. For 18 months, human infiltrators and sympathizers from oppressed species had seeded Council networks with dormant programs, waiting for Elena's signal. Now they activated. Power grids failed. Communication networks collapsed. Navigation systems randomized their coordinates. The great bureaucratic machine that managed 1,000 worlds ground to a halt in the span of minutes. "What have you done?" Zethkar roared, his composure finally cracking as emergency lights bathed the chamber in hellish red. Elena smiled, an expression that sent involuntary shivers through evolutionary systems evolved to recognize apex predators. "We took notes. For 2 years you studied us. You never realized we were studying you back." The massive view screens around the chamber flickered to life, showing scenes from across the Empire. On mining worlds, the Mordoon were throwing off their neural control collars. In the Outer Rim, Pithali navigators were redirecting cargo ships to free the enslaved crews. And on a dozen core worlds, other humans, sleeper agents who had infiltrated the Council's infrastructure, were systematically dismantling the Empire from within. "You see," Elena continued, her chains now hanging loose as the magnetic locks failed, "you made the same mistake every empire makes. You assumed your superiority was natural law instead of temporary circumstance." "Impossible," whispered the Jindai representative, her energy form flickering with distress. "Our technology is millennia beyond yours." "Your technology," Elena corrected, "was built by slaves who knew they were slaves. Ours was built by free people who learned to be cleverer than their masters." The chamber shook as explosions echoed from the lower levels. The lights went out entirely, plunging the great hall into darkness broken only by the aliens' natural bioluminescence. In that darkness, Elena's voice carried with perfect clarity. "No more." 2 words, whispered like a prayer and heard like a promise. By morning, the Galactic Council was finished. Their empire, built on the assumption that might made right and superior technology guaranteed dominance, crumbled like sand before the tide. Some worlds declared independence immediately, others fell into chaos. A few joined the growing coalition of free species that humanity was already organizing, but throughout the galaxy, those 2 words echoed: no more. No more slavery disguised as classification. No more surrendering to the inevitable. No more accepting that some beings were born to rule while others were born to serve. Elena Vasquez returned to Earth 3 months later to find her daughter Sophia, now 8 years old, helping plant trees in the memorial garden for those who had died in the struggle. When Sophia asked what her mother had done during the war, Elena simply said she had reminded the universe that freedom was not negotiable. Some words, when spoken at the right moment by the right person, have the power to reshape reality itself. Sometimes, a whisper can bring down an empire.